that the International Civil Aviation Organization tracks all the aircraft accidents. And they find that on average, there is one accident per 1 million takeoffs. Now, assuming that this thing will eventually show up, I'll give you a few more little things that kind of play into this. And that is that the safest way to travel is to fly. The safest way to transport natural gas, petroleum products is in a pipeline. And this is one of the biggest arguments that people have for pipeline. Now, I'm going to throw out a number or two. I want you to raise your hand when you feel that you know how many miles of pipelines exist in the United States as either transmission lines and or distribution lines. Now, 1 million miles, 2 million miles, okay, we got one, 3 million miles, well, how about 2.5 million? There's roughly 2.5, and my lovely assistant has decided that she knows what we're doing. So you now have 2.5 million miles of pipeline. And it looks something like this. The red ones are the liquid petroleum products, not liquefied natural gas. There's an interesting problem, and I think Jim knows about this, and that is that if you put too much pressure on the tank or on the pipeline, it becomes liquid. And then it gives you a whole different method of having to do things. So with this, I was talking about aircraft accidents. For some reason, they have only compiled everything through 2013. And the gas people had only compiled through 2013. So 2013 was a comparatively good year. I don't know, the dark is the number of incidents, and these are the number of people who died. And you can see, going back in time, things weren't that good. This airplane here is ancient. It's probably about 80 years old. This is the Grand Canyon incident involving an old Constellation. And this is what we have pretty much flying today, something equivalent to 340 or 737. Again, it is the safest way to go. Now, here we have the pipelines, and in 2013, it was 2.2 million miles of pipeline. And you can see that when the data was first collected in 1984, that the number of pipeline miles has virtually doubled. What you have here was a little gas line rupture that occurred 10 miles north of Charleston, and this was in December of 2012. It was in West Virginia.
That's
now,
during,
excuse me?
right after construction? Or
well,
the
this
explode?
one was a rupture, amazingly. And it was on a relatively small pipeline.
Under the interstate.
No, it was next to it.
Oh, wasn't it?
I-77?
Yeah.
Now, in this particular case, this shows another rupture, but there was no fire. Now, I'll be talking a little bit about what happens later. Now, this is one that happened, we can get rid of that one. I think I hit something. I may have inadvertently touched that blue thing on the bottom. This one happened to be a rupture that occurred in an old pipeline. The pipe was thrown up into the air, hit some transmission lines, and a source of ignition was found, and it was pretty impressive. Now, what is that? It's a backhoe, but it and its cousins are the primary source of pipeline ruptures, fires, etc. In 90% of the cases, you'll find a burned out track hoe, backhoe next to where the fire was. And this talk basically is on personal safety and other things. Every pipeline has the potential of rupturing by either old age or by some piece of equipment coming to get it. Now, we have the Yellowstone River, I think most people have heard about in the news. They said that gasoline or that crude oil had gotten into the water system. Well, in actuality, before it got censored, it was benzene. Now, benzene is one of the items that is used in fracking, and if you have fracked oil, then you have benzene and a whole bunch of other chemicals floating along with it. The first time that I heard about a crude oil tanker car exploding, I could not believe it, because crude oil can't be set on fire with an acetylene torch. But what happens with the fracked oil is that it actually stratifies en route. Benzene on the top, and then it goes down to the bottom where you have the stuff that you can't light up. So the important thing is that any place that you are, that you plan to do some digging, you need to call 811, and they need to look for these things. Now, you have water, gas, electric lines, all coming perhaps underneath the street, coming in from the side, and other places that after a while, you can't remember where they are. Now, I know Jim knows about the OTR site, and after a few years, we forgot where we put stuff. And so we were going around cutting up all the electrical lines, but what the heck. Now, interestingly, what you need to do if one of these things happens is you have to protect yourself. If you are a rescuer, you are the most important person. You need to protect yourself. Second, if it is safe, you may protect other people. And if it is safe, you may protect personal property. Now, what happens when you have, let's say, a gas leak? If it is on a supply line to your home, it will have a noxious odor, which you can pick up quickly. If it's in a transmission line, you don't. And if it's in a transmission line, it has such a large pressure that you're going to hear a very loud hiss. Actually, it's going to be so loud it will hurt your hearing if it hasn't already ignited. So what you would do is immediately leave the area and encourage anyone else you can to leave the area. Go to a point upwind and where you can no longer smell the gas, and you can talk normally over the sound of the hiss of the methane coming out. Now, I don't know why, but a cell phone is thought to be a source of ignition because they tell you this around the gas pumps. So you don't call as soon as you find out there's a problem. You call when you're safe, when you're safely away. Now, you should leave any vehicles there, not trying to start them. Turns out that while most ignition systems are completely enclosed today, the starter motor isn't, and some sparks would emanate from that. If you've ever wondered why most of the EMS equipment is diesel, it's because you can let it run and it doesn't have a ignition associated with it. Also, if you've noticed, they generally have air horns, and they use air horns because it doesn't require an electric relay to spark. Now, you will call 911. When you call 911, you want to be able to have as much information available as possible, such as the number of people at the site, how many people are too close, what other dangers are involved, if there's transmission lines, a whole litany of things to make you feel good. Then, what do you think will happen? At the 911 dispatch, they're going to try and attempt to locate the operator of the pipeline. And the reason I say attempt is that there is more than 3 million additional miles of supply lines going to your home, going to businesses, going to large-scale users that are not required to be mapped by the Department of Transportation. So that if you're in an area like this, you'd probably think that Columbia Gas may be the person to call. Interestingly, when you look this up on the Department of Transportation website, the emergency telephone number goes to a PR person in Charleston. Now, if the fire department shows up, what is their first response?
Protect themselves.
They need to make sure that the scene is safe. Now, how close are they going to bring their equipment? Not very close. They will attempt to make sure that there is no one in the area that could be jeopardized. If the pipeline is on fire, what are they going to do? What?
Probably try to put it out.
They can't.
You can't?
There are some tricks that you can use on wellheads, but for this, you have to call them in from Texas, and they'll be here in about 48 hours.
So just keep the area clear, I guess.
Right, they keep the area clear, and they attempt to minimize the damage from radiant heat to other structures. You'll also note that they probably will not get their vehicles within 2,000 feet of the site. We had an occasion in Montgomery County, Maryland, where a tractor-trailer carrying 500-pound bombs overturned on the 270 connector. Montgomery County, in its infinite wisdom, responded to it with almost everything they had. It turned out, in retrospect, that 90% of this equipment was in the crater area should it have exploded. So they learned from that, and now they park quite a distance away. Now, all